I think one big difference between Judaism, at least as I understand it, and the Christian tradition that I come from and that many of my students come from, is the idea of the afterlife. So let's talk for a minute about the Jewish understanding of afterlife.
You left that for the last 5 minutes of class, did you?
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Um, it's it's a I think Jews are just as confused as everyone else because we live in a Christian society. And so our kids grow up hearing about heaven and hell and doing good and going one place and doing bad and going the other place. And they know that Judaism doesn't necessarily believe that, but they don't know what the alternative is. And Judaism is not particularly helpful because one of the actual main differences between Judaism and Christianity is that one thing we can say for certain is that no one's gone and come back. And that's definitively different in Christianity, right? Because like Christianity believes that Jesus died and came back to life and can say things like, well, I know for certain this is what things look like up there or whatever. So what I'll say is that part of the emphasis of living the one life you have on earth and doing the best work you can while you are on this earth comes from this idea that like the goal is not to get somewhere else in Judaism. The goal is to be where you are and do what you can with what you have in the place that you are in. That said, the rabbis do have imaginations. So there's a couple of different things that there's a couple of different ways that different rabbis and texts speak about the afterlife. There's a place called Gehenna. Gehenna, the physical place is Gehinom. It's a valley in Jerusalem. And according to archaeology, I believe, it is where the Canaanites lived. And according to when we're looking at ancient Jewish practice in connection, in the ancient Near East, there was child sacrifice at some point in some of these places and some of these tribes. So the Valley of Gehinnom was seen as a place of child sacrifice and thus a bad place, and you didn't want to go there. So this concept of Gehenna developed as this place that a soul might go after a person dies. So a person is made of a body and a soul, right? Body, totally mortal, comes from the dust, goes to the dust, right? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's the mortal piece of a person. Your soul is immortal. Your soul is that godliness, that God piece. Your soul cannot be born or die. Your soul gets matched up with a body for a time, and then you are you. But when your body is gone, the you-ness of you is still there. That essence of you, that soul, is still a part of the universe, and goes back to God, unless you have some things to atone for. So if there's some stuff you need to repent for and you didn't do it all while you were still alive, your soul may spend some time in Gehenna. Now, the rabbis were like, you can't spend too much time in Gehenna. No one can possibly have done so much wrong that it takes them more than a year to repent. And so one of the reasons we say this prayer for those who have died for up to a full year after they die is to help God remember that their soul is in Gehenna, but like God should let them out soon. And in the way that we're all like everything's superstitious, even when it's not, the rabbis also said, you don't actually have to say this prayer for a whole year. You can say it for 11 months because you don't want to like imagine that your loved one was so bad that they're going to need a whole year of God being reminded to whatever. So Gehenna is one place that we talk about. And the other description that I really, really love that I'll close on is that there's a story that the rabbis tell where one of the rabbis really wanted to know what happens after you die. And God said, I'll show you. And God takes this rabbi to a banquet hall. And this banquet hall is laid out with like everything you could possibly, all the matzo ball soup in the world, everything you could possibly want to eat. And the people look just really unhappy. And they're all sitting there, really grumpy. And they aren't eating. And the rabbi looks a little closer and notices, and there's two versions of the story. In one version of the story, the forks are so long that they can't get the fork into their mouths, so they can't eat anything. And in another version, they have no elbows, so they can't get the food to their mouths, right? Okay, so then God says, I want to show you another place, and takes the rabbi to another place. Same banquet table, same oodles of matzo ball soup, same people, except they are happily feeding each other. And those are like two places that one might end up. So it's a non-answer. It's not, there's nothing so visual as like devil horns or angel wings involved. And I think Judaism really does emphasize like living life while you're alive. But I also think that I love that story in particular, because I think it also teaches that the difference between heaven and hell, the difference between good and bad, the difference between where you want to go and where you don't want to go, has entirely to do, again, as has been the theme of this conversation, with how you treat yourself and others vis-a-vis each other.
So yeah, so there's so many more questions that I have. We didn't get to theodicy or any of that stuff. So we'll have to have another conversation at some other
Okay.
time.
So that's why we say the mourner's Kaddish for a year?
Yeah.
That is, I never heard that before.
Well, thank you so much.